Hi, Larry Gates here, host of the B2B Growth Club. You know, thought leadership is one of those topics that B2B companies struggle with all the time. And so I invited Pete Stege. Pete is one of the B2B growth thought leaders in this space, and we want to talk about thought leadership today. Pete, welcome, and tell me about thought leadership. And you had an interesting notion that you shared with me about the things that a B2B marketer can learn about thought leadership from B2C.
Right.
And it's not something we normally think about. We normally think about B2C as being this whole separate world.
Right.
And there's not much in common here, not much that we can have as takeaway. But in thought leadership, you're seeing some real advantages to doing that. So
yeah, Larry, I have found that B2B marketers have such an opportunity to learn from B2C. First, because often they just don't do it, and so they really have a chance to differentiate themselves. But there's a lot of things that B2C is doing that can really help with thought leadership. And before, I have these three things I want to share, but before I do, let's just talk for a minute about how B2B and B2C are different, all right? So first of all, B2C has a different buyer, right? B2C is a consumer, one person usually, where B2B tends to be a team of buyers, and that team of buyers has to come together to decide to buy. That difference makes a huge difference in how you go to market,
sure.
Right? And then the second key difference is how the decision is made. With B2C, it's much more emotional, and with B2B, it can lean towards being more logical or rational, the decision, right?
So in one, you're justifying the purchase decision afterwards, and the second one, you have to justify it beforehand.
Right. Well, this is where B2B can learn so much, because the reality is those buyers in B2B, they're people too.
People too, right?
Right? And actually emotion is a huge opportunity. So that's the first thing that thought leadership programs can learn from B2C is don't forget emotion. I read a study that said 90% of decisions are made unconsciously based on emotion. And then consciously, logic is used to rationalize that emotional decision that was already made.
Yeah, and that's even in the B2B space.
It's everywhere, right? With people in general. So that's the first one. The first thing to learn is use emotion. It's a very powerful tool.
And I find a lot of companies are resistant to that. They don't think that thinking about the emotive state of a buyer and how you want to prepare that is an important consideration.
Right. And then the second thing that B2B can learn from B2C is it's not about you. It's so easy. So I'll go to B2C is good at this, right? They know their consumer customer, and they tell the story that helps that customer make the decision to buy from them. B2B marketers can be stuck inside thinking about their company and their product, especially in thought leadership. You need to get out of you and talk about your customer's issue, and the thought leadership should be about an issue that your customer cares about. They don't want to hear about you, especially with your thought leadership.
That's a good point. A lot of companies I see push, and they're talking feeds and speeds, and they're expecting their buyer to make all that translation.
Right.
Instead of, as you said, take a cue from the consumer marketing, get to their need and market to that.
Right.
Yeah, good. What's the third?
And the third one is don't overcomplicate things. Because B2B is selling to this team of buyers, it's a real easy mistake to make to create a real complicated set of personas and sales processes, trying to reach all these different people with different stories. And I'm not saying you don't need to think about all those different people, but the most powerful thought leadership simplifies that using the 80-20 rule and says, who's the target of our thought leadership? Who's the decision maker is probably the most likely candidate, but who is that one persona that we really are gonna, if nothing else happens, we're gonna change the mind of that person, and then organize all of your efforts to do that. What you'll find is if you do that, there's plenty of overflow benefit to the other constituents.
Yeah, that's a simple principle of focus, but it's so powerful, especially as you're putting your thought leadership program together, because I imagine a lot of companies feel overwhelmed, feeling they need to touch all the different buyers in a B2B space with a thought leadership piece. And you're saying, don't do that. Focus on the one that is most critical and build your thought leadership program around that.
That's it.
Excellent. Well, that's good. 3 things that you can learn from how B2C develops their thought leadership. They might call it something else. They might call it influence marketing. They might call it other things. But 3 takeaways from Pete on how you can apply those lessons into your own thought leadership program. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, hit the like and the subscribe button and leave us a comment. Make sure you turn on notifications so you get our next videos that come out. And we'll see you at the next one.